All right, everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 13 recap. 13 weeks down, one left in the books. This one was a memorable matchup week. Scoring was all over the place, really high scores this week. Fortunately, nobody has been getting hurt, so the beginning of the season, early on in the season, man, a real roller coaster. Although I guess we got some CMC things going on, some San Francisco 49ers things to address a little bit. But other than that, compared to how things were at the beginning of the season, man, it was brutal. So here in week 13, there were no bye weeks. Everybody was basically at full strength. So it was a lot of fun matchups, a lot of high-scoring matchups with playoff implications all over the place. I'll get to that after we go through the matchups here, because the playoff situation is still a little bit up in the air. I think I talked about it a little bit on the lineup yesterday, that the way the matchups fall in Week 14, there are a lot of weird, shifty things that could happen. Disco hasn't clinched a playoff spot yet, but he's probably going to get one. Because as we know, Detling, which I guess, let's just talk about this real quick. He says he's not giving up, that he just thinks his team doesn't have it this year, which essentially means I'm giving up, more or less. And it's funny because I don't know if it was just because there was no podcast this past week with Thanksgiving, that the usual dissection of trades didn't happen. Maybe it'll happen this week because there was a flurry of activity leading up to the trade deadline, and we had Yinzer Jags, when this trade was made, sitting in the number 6 spot in the playoffs, okay? Trading Amon-Ra St. Brown, the wide receiver 2 on the season, wide receiver 2, Rico Dowdle, a solid... I don't know if people just were off of him because he has a funny name, but like, he's been a productive player on your team. 10, 12, 15 points pretty consistently. You'll take that from your running back. And then Tucker Kraft, traded him away. I guess he was expendable, but what do you get in return? Rome Odunze, like the wide receiver 50. You swap tight ends, so you traded Kraft for Kincaid, who is hurt, and another Buffalo Bill. You need another Buffalo Bill on your team. Rashee Rice, who obviously is on IR, and I assume your plan is to keep him for next year, and then a kicker. So Amon-Ra, Kraft, and Dowdle for Odunze, Kincaid, Rashee, and Moody. Basically all people on Possum Magic's bench, giving him your starters for his bench players. All right, I know, again, you're using this trade to keep Rashee Rice as a keeper next year, but come on, man. The wide receiver 2 for, I guess, Rice for you made this trade for next year. You're not playing for right now. I don't care if you think that I think your team isn't good enough, so if you get in the playoffs, you're an easy mark. That's not the case at all. I've made it well established over the years that I firmly believe that all you have to do is get into the playoffs. Just get in, and anything can happen. But you're not Detling. You're just like, my team sucks. That's the problem. You have given up on your team. You refuse to admit it, and you won't say it. But to everybody else looking around and watching what's going on, you have given up on your team. Even if you end up being right, I guess, and dropping out of the playoffs, even if you had not made that trade, to give up the fight with multiple weeks left to go, while there's said you're in the, if the playoffs had started that day, you would be in. There are people fighting to get to where you already are. And you're just like, my team's not good enough. I don't whatever. Like, I'm playing for next. Like, you, this claim that you're not giving up. You are giving up. No matter how many times you want to say that that's not true. You're waving the white flag on this year, man. And it's really that's just the most disappointing thing about it. That said, you're as a team in the playoffs with other people trying to get to where you already are. It's hard to watch and just disappointing. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. But anyway, all right. So let's get into the matchups, because then we've got a lot to talk about this and that into Week 14, the last week of the regular season. All right. And as always, we talk about the defending champion first. And guys, it had to happen eventually. The Wizard of Wimber, that W10 is now an L1. Finally, Brian can enjoy seeing that L1 there. And once again, Ed Lager drops double hondos on me. 2 hondos on me. He did it in week 2, and he does it again in week 13, making Ed Lager the only person that I was not able to defeat so far this year. So we'll see what happens there. But anyway, Ed Lager gets the victory with actually had like a 5 or 6 point lead going into Monday night. But as you all know, the Denver Broncos defense, 2 pick sixes of Jameis Winston pretty much sealed the deal. Final score here, Ed Lager 221.4 to the Wizards 191.25. At least I put up a fight in this matchup here. Ed, and perhaps the hardest aspect of this matchup, Russell Wilson. Not bench fodder, but free agent scraps. Russell Wilson has one of the best statistical games of his entire career. And he goes for 64 points on me this week. Russell Wilson. I was expecting him to do maybe 40, and he goes for 64, over 400 yards. I guess that's what you get when you play the Bengals. All right, and it was just solid numbers up and down. Neighbors goes for 15.5. Keenan goes for 24.5. 2 touchdowns for him on Thanksgiving. Devontae Adams, another touchdown. He gets 17.5. Stevenson and Saquon, 12.5. 22.5. Glad I got a kind of a quiet game from Saquon. Ended up not mattering. Hunter Henry goes for 14.5, and Zay Flowers in the flex 10. Matt Gay gets you about 4 point something, and then the Denver Broncos defense. Let's see, Yahoo says 24. We had 2 banks. They jumped you up. What about 15? No, 12 would be, 12 to 36. Because they gave up, they got those 2 pick sixes, obviously. One of them was a bank, but they gave up a ton of points and a ton of yards. So you didn't get a whole lot extra tacked on there that Yahoo wasn't already counting. But yeah, I think it was it must have been 36 because you got exactly 100 points from Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos defense. Exactly 100. All right, and then for the Wizard, we got Burrow, Chase, and Higgins. The triple stack here goes for 52.5, 20.5, and 18. JSN goes for 12. Rashad goes for 9. Tracy goes for 14.5. Fryermuth turned out to be a good re-pick up. Plugged him in against Russell to try to combat Russell Wilson there. He does catch a touchdown from Russell. Gets 18.8. Puka goes for 17.5. Fairbairn goes for 13, about approximately 13. And then the Tampa Bay defense tried to throw that game away against Carolina there. I believe I tacked on about 9 points up to 16 for the Tampa Bay defense. But, couldn't quite get there this week. So with Russell Wilson going off, what was his previous high this year? You were lucky if you got 40 from Russell Wilson because he had only put up 40 once, and he was in the 30 range. And then he pops off for twice his usual number against the Bengals here. I honestly thought that they would run the ball a lot more than they did, but they came out throwing. But yeah, so just looking at the matchup, really not much you can do when your opponent goes for 220. A respectable performance, so can't hang my head too much. With the victory, Ed Lager moves to 8-5. He is in 4th place, while Wizard of Wimber drops to 10-3, although remains in 1st place, and most likely will be staying there and getting the number 1 seed in the playoffs. But we'll come back to that when we get to the rest of the stuff here. All right, then we had 2 teams. This was basically sort of, but not quite, win or go home for Shawshank versus Biscuits and Porn. One team was going to get loss number 8, and that ends up being Shawshank Athletics. Biscuits and Porn saves his season, at least for the time being. He gets the victory, 192 even to 180.3 for Shawshank. Shawshank had a chance at this one. He only lost by 12. But as we know, CMC got hurt, I think, in the second quarter of that game and went out after scoring 8.5 points. So you would have needed to get him to get to about 20. But the 49ers just looked mostly lost in that game, in the snow game there in Buffalo. I was this close to putting the Buffalo Bills defense in over Carolina. I was at work and lost track of time. And literally, as I was looking at the matchup, those 4 o'clock games started. I think Tampa Bay's defense and Rachaad White, and I was like, oh shit! I thought the game was at 4:30, not at 4:05 or whatever, and was actually it's like, oh well, I guess I can't change defenses now because literally as I was looking at the matchup, things clicked over and I couldn't make any changes there. But anyway, enough about myself. Let's talk about the matchup here. Biscuits and Porn. What do we got? We got Patrick Mahomes going for 49. McConkey goes for 20.5. DJ Moore, 23.5. Mooney only 5. Gibbs only 10.5. Najee goes for 25. Evan Engram, 11. Gets some extra credit there for throwing some punches, defending his quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, on that completely unnecessary elbow to the head that knocked him out. Bang Bang goes for 21. Aubrey, the Cowboys kicker, goes for about 9. And then your Chiefs defense, your Chiefs buns, Yahoo says 12. Looks like you got a small bump of 6 to 18 there. And it was enough to just get past Shawshank this week. I was kind of surprised that he went with Caleb Williams. And watching the first half of that Thanksgiving Bears-Lions game, felt like I was correct in that assessment, but then he went off in the second half, throwing a bunch of touchdowns in comeback mode, almost got there, ended up getting you almost 49 points, so good performance there. Your quarterbacks scored exactly the same, 48.7, both Mahomes and Caleb. All right, Pickens goes for 16.5, Garrett Wilson 9, Harrison Jr. 17, Swift and Aaron Jones, your running backs, both of them go for about 9.5. Kelsey goes for 14. CMC again, 8.7 before going out with his injury. He's now done for the year. Bates, your kicker, goes for about 12. And your Seattle defense, one of the only other binks this week, they had a long touchdown return, pick 6 of Aaron Rodgers, I believe, or was it I think so. I can't remember if it was a kick return. Was it a special teams? But it doesn't matter. Anyway, you got it. Yahoo says 20. Josh, looks like you got... There were very few binks this week, but that was one of them. And we bumped you, what, like... excuse me. 15 to 35, I'm going to guess. 18 would be too much. So 15 up to 35. Said again, it was just not quite enough to get past Biscuits this week. Even though he had only 5 from Mooney, everybody else, he had several players get in the 20s. And Josh, you had a couple guys who were just around 10. Needed a little bit more from those guys to keep pace with Biscuits this week. Just not quite able to do it. With the victory, Biscuits and Porn moved up to 6 and 7, and he is currently in 6th place. If the playoffs started right now, Biscuits and Porn would be stealing the number 6 seed, while Shawshank Athletics drops to 5 and 8, and he is now in 9th place. All right, then we had another sort of winner go home for Darkwing Jet, and perhaps it's going to be go home because Boomer's deep, balls deep, whatever you want to call him. Zach gets the victory over Darkwing. Ed and Zach are just crushing right now. 224 even to Darkwing's 190.2. So almost exactly the same score as Ed and me. Zach takes down Justin. All right, so what do we got? Jordan Love goes for 42.5. Sutton, Evans, and Drake London. Zach, your team is not even. It's like I was looking back at our first matchup earlier in the season, and you have like a completely different team now than you did then. Jordan Love 42.5. Sutton, Evans, and London 16, 26, and 17 respectively. Montgomery goes for 15.5. Jacobs goes for 22. McBride also goes for 22. Kamara 19. Boswell, which kicker that you traded for, I think he might be the highest scoring kicker in the league this year. So much for Brian telling me that he doesn't make trades that don't improve his team or make his team better. Whatever. Then he trades Coup for Boswell. About 16 points there. Washington defense, good game against Tennessee. Yahoo says 14. Again, I can't remember. Always want to double check your lineups here because they're checking if I missed any binks. But yeah, there just weren't very many this week. So Yahoo says 14. Looks like you got a 15. A 15-point bump to 29 from your buns. There, your Love and Washington defense. And solid scores basically up and down. About 20 points from everybody, with the guys who went way over 20, the guys who are in the teens there. Just about a perfect week you could hope for balls deep this week, and it was enough to get past and perhaps send packing Darkwing Jet. Josh Allen goes for 43 points in the snow. Lamb, Jameson, and Jaden, 6, 9.5, and 19.5. Jaden Reed, only 3 catches, but 2 of them are touchdowns. Mixon goes for 25. Bucky Irving goes off against Carolina for 30.5 points. Cotton, no, only 6. Kyron in the flex, 21.5. McLaughlin, the Tampa Bay kicker, goes for about 14. And the Texans defense, knocking out, again, as we know, Trevor Lawrence, getting Mac Jones. They barely are able to win the game, though. Yahoo says 9. Justin, looks like you got a Would 9 points be too much? It would be. 6-point bump to 15 for your Houston Texans defense. But yeah, despite, I said 190, a solid score, going to get you victories more often than not. But Justin, you just ran into a kind of a buzzsaw this week. Like I said, almost everybody in Zach's lineup averaged about 20 points. And you only got 6 from CD, 10 from Jameson, 6 from Cotton. That just couldn't quite keep pace this week with balls deep. He is now 8-5, and he is in 3rd place. Zach and Ed breathing down Possum Magic's neck there, trying to steal away that bye week from him here in week 14. While Darkwing Jet drops to 5-8, and he is in 8th place. Whew, all right. Then we got, what else? AIDS, Disco versus Gags to Riches. Disco trying to get his way back into the playoffs here, and he is able to get the victory over Gags. 193.8 to 149.5. Disco, beneficiary of that wild Broncos-Browns game last night. Let's see. Jalen Hurts, only 30 points from him. A.J. Brown, 11.5. Jacoby Myers, 15.5. Been a solid performer since they traded away Devontae Adams, which allowed you to trade away some of your excess receivers, and he's been and plug him in from the bench, and he's been a pretty solid contributor to your team. Tyreek goes for 20. Ashan goes for 21. Bang Bang goes for 28.5. Njoku 26. Brees only 6. Carlson, your Las Vegas kicker, only 1 point, maybe 1 point something probably, because he made a short field goal, but he missed a bunch of kicks there. And the Dallas Cowboys defense plugged them in a good matchup versus the Giants there on Thanksgiving. Yahoo says 24. Looks like you got a 9-point bump to 33 for Dallas's defense there. So they outscored your quarterback here. But yeah, despite the low quarterback score, solid numbers in the teens and 20s there, pretty much up and down the rest of your lineup, and it was enough to get you past Gags this week. He's got Jaden Daniels going for 53.7. Tank Dell only 3.3. D-Hop goes for 13. Brian Thomas Jr. 18.5. Chubb last night goes for 12.5. James Conner 11. Kyle Pitts putting up a big 0 on you. Pacheco goes for 6 in his return from his injury. Excuse me. Lutz goes for about 11. And your Detroit Lions defense gets the win on Thanksgiving over the Bears, thanks to that really embarrassing last play scenario there that went on. Don't know what on earth they were thinking. I don't think anybody does. And I believe it got their coach fired. Yahoo says 11. Gags, looks like you got a 9-point bump to 20. But yeah, good. You dominated the quarterback position in this matchup, but that was pretty much it the rest of the way down the lineups here. And with the victory, Disco moves up to 7-6. He is now in 5th place, while Gags to Riches drops to 5-8. And unfortunately, he is all the way down there in 11th place. Then we had Possum Magic trying to hold on to that bye week number 2 seed. He needed to get a victory this week because he is in trouble with bye weeks here in week 14. Has been knowing that for a while. Detling threw Tree a bone here, making that trade, helping him be able to fill out a lineup in week 14. And Possum gets Dub C Hooligans this week, and he is able to get the victory and hold on to that number 2 seed, at least for right now. 180.95 to 116.35, putting the Dub C Hooligans definitely officially away for the year. Let's see. For Possum, we got Lamar going for 50. Scary Terry, 2 touchdowns, 27.5 points. Justin Jefferson, 17. Pittman, 9. Derrick Henry, 14. Dowdle, again, this boy Dowdle, 24.5 points. Noah Gray, the Kansas City tight end, chasing those touchdowns this week. Wasn't able to get them. Fortunately, it didn't matter for you. He got 10 points. Amon-Ra in the flex, only 12.5. Sanders, your Miami kicker, goes for about 3 point something. And then your Vikings defense, just barely able to hold on and get that victory versus Arizona. Yahoo says 10. Looks like we gave you a 3-point bump to 13. So yeah, low score there for Minnesota's defense. But fortunately, you were able to hold on and get that victory. Got enough points here from your team. You got to feel pretty confident when you are throwing Lamar Jackson out there and your opponent is sending out Cooper Rush. 34.5 points from him. Waddle, Debo, and Rashad Bateman. 11.5, 4, and 0 down the line there. Chase Brown, solid, been solid all year long. Got to admit that for sure. 19 points. His projection was 18. 18. His projection was 18.5. Chase Brown. Wow. But anyway, yeah, he's been a solid 20+ point scorer almost every week here for you. Definitely a better keeper than Gus Edwards was. What else we got? Chuba Hubbard coming back to earth. Only 2.5 points for him. He's got Jonathan Brooks, the rookie, coming back, eating into some of his playing time. So we'll see how that plays out the rest of the season, because I do believe Possum Magic has been sitting on Jonathan Brooks, literally, not literally, but figuratively, for the whole season here. Waiting to see what happens. Kittle, only 1.5 points in that blizzard. Johnny Smith goes for 21.5. Dicker, the kicker, goes for about 13. And your Rams defense this week, Yahoo says 6. Might have been 9 points from them. But yeah, Dubsy Hooligans pretty much just goes out with a whimper this week. Probably clinching the Phillip Rivers jersey next year. What do we got? Anything? All right. All right. Possum Magic gets the victory. He's now 9-4. He stays in second place, at least for now. Dubsy Hooligans, opposite end of the spectrum. He is 4-9, and he is in 12th place. Final matchup, Hillbillies on PCP versus Yinzer Jags. And Yinzer's perhaps a... what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. Anyway, a battle of the podcasters, one current, one former. Hillbillies on PCP, trying to keep his hopes alive. And he is able to do that. He goes for victory, 154.85 for Hillbillies. Yinzer Jags, 115.15. All right. For Hillbillies, I'm tripping over my words because I'm trying to think of what I want to say. To describe Detling's team. Maybe I'll think of it. Maybe I won't. Doesn't matter. Anyway, what do we got? Baker goes for 31.5. Nico 20. Metcalf, DK Metcalf 10.5. Calvin Ridley only 6.5. Jonathan Taylor 17.5. Everybody's got like about right around half a point there. Jalen Warren 10.5. Brock Bowers goes off for 30.2. Taysom Hill, oh Brian, poor Brian, I'm so sorry. Forgot to mention this. Your boy, your man crush, Taysom Hill, tears his ACL and is now done for the year after getting 9.7 this week. Fortunately, it's probably not going to matter for you going forward. Although you're trying to knock off, it's not going to help trying to knock off Possum Magic this week and maybe force him to have to play in week 15. But yeah, Taysom Hill tore his ACL. He is not young, right? So I don't know. Yeah, okay, yeah, it says on Yahoo he is going to turn 35 before the season next year. So that is not good news for the future of Taysom Hill. Have we seen the last of him? Perhaps not, but the outlook is not looking too positive there for him. Koo goes for 6 point something maybe, and then your Eagles defense gets the victory over Baltimore. Yahoo says 9. Brian, looks like we gave you a 3-point bump to 12. Must have been a lot of yards and stuff in that game. Didn't really have any turnovers, a couple of sacks there. So they didn't do too much that we had to tack on extra for you. But it was enough to get past Yinzer Jags this week. Matthew Stafford, almost, you guys basically scored exactly the same. Again, in quarterbacks here. So Baker Mayfield was 31.55. Stafford, 31.45. Cooper Kupp suffered with that performance there, only 4.7. Amari Cooper, only 4.2. Oh, man. All your receivers, 4 point something. Odunze, 4.5. Kenneth Walker, only 6.5. He's really fallen off a cliff here, unfortunately, for you in the second half of the season. James Cook, been solid, 22 points there. Laporta only catches, much like Jaden Reed, only catches 3 passes, but 2 of them are touchdowns. 3 catches for 6 yards, and so 2 yards a catch, but 2 of them are touchdowns. Starting multiple Bills running backs in this matchup. Ray Davis goes for 13.5. Tucker, your kicker, I believe he missed a bunch of kicks. Possibly cost the Ravens that matchup against Philadelphia. You got like 6 point something. And then you started the New York Giants defense on Thanksgiving at Dallas. I know you only had San Francisco versus at Buffalo as your only other alternative. Not sure if you could have picked somebody up that would have been better or made a trade or done something before the end. But you did not have any banks here, so it looks like Yahoo says 3. I think you got 6 from your Giants defense. But yeah. Yinzer Jags. Predicting his own demise, I guess. Why can't I think of what you're willing it when you you will something into existence, but not. I keep wanting to say manifest destiny, but no, it's not, and I don't know why it's I can't quite just put on one, and I'll probably get some. I'm sure deservedly get some heat from Disco there, not be able to think of what I'm trying to say. But anyway, with the victory, Hillbillies on PCP joins the 5-8 club. He is in 10th place, while Yinzer Jags drops just outside the playoff door. He is 6-7, and he is now in 7th place. Whew, all right. I'm winded after all that talking. All right, those were all the matchups in week 13. Week 14 coming up. Let's talk about it. We've got playoff spots up for grabs still. Zach and Ed, balls deep, and Ed Lager get the little asterisks next to their names after this past week. They are definitely in. But we got Possum Magic, who is behind those guys in points, but they are only 1 game behind him in the standings here. Possum Magic, you said we know you have some bye week issues here in week 14, although you got to feel pretty good possibly with throwing Jameis Winston in there after his performance last night. Even despite the turnovers, I wonder what was his actual point total in our league last night. 73, 70 basically, or 74. He had a bink to Jerry Jeudy, so that would have been 77 points from Jameis Winston last night. 100% did not see that coming. I wasn't going to be starting Jerry Jeudy. He ends up having the game of his life last night. Would have won me the matchup if I had plugged Jeudy in there. If I had done that, it would have been probably over JSN. But yeah, there's just, I guess I still can't believe that the Denver Broncos defense played that poorly. It was a fun game to watch, no doubt about that. But still, the biggest surprise to me was the Broncos defense. Despite the pick sixes and stuff, overall, just giving up tons of yardage and points. Both teams going up and down the field the whole time. So get back to the playoffs here. What do we got? Again, I said the Wizard of Wimber here, despite the loss, even if I lose again this week and Treesize wins, Possum Magic wins, I'm currently 105 points ahead of you. So even if I lose and you win this week, unless you'd have to outscore me by 105 points for me to lose the number 1 seed here and get the regular season championship. But said for Possum, more importantly, for you, more urgently, is just trying to cling to that bye week in week 15 here. Because again, you got Balls Deep and Ed Logger breathing right down your neck. They both have more points than you and are just one game behind. If you lose this week, either one of them could jump up in there and steal your bye week away. If you've been in a comfortable position almost the whole season here, Possum, so you got to be sweating here, getting down to the very end with the possibility of, after all this hard work, getting through the season, and then possibly losing your bye week at the very end. Zach and Ed have clinched playoff spots. And number 5, we've got Disco at 7 and 6. Then we've got Biscuits and Yinzer Jags, both at 6 and 7. And then we've got Darkwing Jut, Shawshank, Hillbillies, and Gags, all competing for all at 5 and 8. Now, the best part here, let's see, we got Justin's point total is 2209. Josh's point total, 2207. Brian's point total, 2205. So the three of you are within 5 points of each other. And so Dub C down there at 4 and 9, he is definitely going to be in last place. But here's the story. All the matchups this coming week, this final week, set things up that it is possible that a team can go 6 and 8 and make the playoffs. So we talked about the standings here. Let's look at the matchups for week 14. All right, like you said, those 5 and 8 teams. We got Justin, Josh, Brian, and Gags. Gags is like 150 points behind, more than that, behind everybody else. So it's going to be tough for you to have a chance. I think you still have a chance. Josh has an L5. That's got to hurt a lot there. Meaning at one point you were 5 and 3, and now you're 5 and 8. But you're still in it. So, like we said, I get Zach here this week. He's trying to clinch a playoff here. He's trying to sneak a bye week away from Possum Magic. For me, it really does not matter what happens in this matchup as long as I put up some decent point total here. Gonna have the number 1 seed and the bye next week. Then we got Biscuits and Porn versus Darkwing Jut. Yahoo projects pretty much even there. But anyway, I'll have to get through this. We went over it briefly on the lineup, but let's run through all the matchups here. We've got Disco versus Yinzerjags, Dub C versus Shawshank, Ed versus Gags, and Hillbillies versus Possum. So, if what do we got? Biscuits. If Biscuits loses and Justin wins, then both of those teams would be 6-8. If Yinzers can beat, if Disco beats Yinzerjags, that would make Yinzerjags 6-8 and definitely clinch the number 5 spot for Disco. So let's see. We got Justin needs to win, and both him and Jim would both be 6-8. Disco wins, then Detling would be also 6-8. So that's 3 teams. Can Dub C knock off Josh? That would make him, no, Josh needs to win. Okay, getting my numbers lost. Josh needs to beat Dub C, which is probably going to happen. No offense, Kevin, but that would make him 6-8, so that's 4 teams at 6-8. Can Gags knock off Ed and make him 6-8? That would be 5 teams at 6-8. And then can Brian knock off Possum, which would make him 6-8. So that would be what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Could possibly have 6 teams all at 6-8 with that one playoff spot that's number 6 seed still open. And again, all of you guys are very close in points there. Biscuits is actually behind you guys. Justin, Josh, and Brian, you guys with 22. Biscuits has 2173. So, yeah. Let's see. Biscuits, basically, if you win, you're in. Right? Okay. Yeah, that's correct. Biscuits, you just have to beat Justin, and you will definitely be in. Because even if Detling beats Disco, you'd be too far ahead of him in points. You'd both be 7-7, and you would be too far ahead of him in points. So is Disco would also be 7-7, but he would be too far ahead in points as well. So yeah, Biscuits, all you have to do is win and you are in. But if you lose and all of those other scenarios fall into place, we could possibly have a 6-8 team make the playoffs. Who would it be? So yeah, you got 2209. Biscuits has 2173. That's only what, a 35-point difference. That's a coverable point total in 1 week, depending on what happens. So yeah. Moral of the story is that number 6 seed. Basically, Biscuits wins, he gets it. But there are a lot of scenarios where it is up for grabs to one of you guys if you can get to 6-8. Is there any way Detling could get in? I think the only way Yinzerjags gets in is if he beats Biscuit, or he beats Disco, and Biscuits also loses. So Biscuits needs one thing to happen, and that's just win. Yinzerjags needs to win, and for Biscuits to lose, and then he is in. But then again, all you teams said we thought we were going to have a big clap out this week. I think we did clap Gags out. But yeah, Gags, you're probably done. It's going to take a miracle, I think, for you to get there. But it is possible that we have a whole bunch of teams at 6-8, and one of you, could it be? I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that this scenario plays out. just to be interesting to see what happens. And one of you guys sneaks in there and takes the last playoff spot. So yeah, going to be a very interesting week. Hopefully a very interesting week 14. Who are all the teams on bye? Let's see. Why won't Yahoo? Yahoo usually lists all the teams here. Why aren't you doing that for me? Come on. All right, but I mean, we know the Texans, the Ravens. Who else is on bye? Broncos, Colts, Commanders. Is that, how many is that? Colts, Commanders, Broncos, Texans, Ravens. That's 5. Who else do we got? There's one more. Who is it? The Jets, I think. Is it? No, the Jets were week 12. Not on there. Come on. Who is it? The Patriots. Patriots are on bye. Okay. So yeah, long story short, could be a very interesting week 14. Could be a complete yawner, depending on how things go. 4 teams clinching playoffs. Disco pretty much in. A lot of things would have to go wrong for Disco. If he was, I'm trying to think. If I just, yeah, you're 100 points ahead of Biscuits. So even if you lose, Biscuits would have to outscore you by 100. I just don't. Why you're not clinched yet, but you're basically in there, and it's going to be a fight for that number 6 seed. So yeah, but really, all of you guys still have a chance. And like I said, talking about Detling's trade and stuff, just get in. All you got to do is get in, and anything can happen. I know from experience, doesn't matter if you're the 1 seed or the 6 seed, you just got to get in, and as long as you're there, you've got a chance. And anything can happen. So it's going to be fun. We got solid teams. Ed and Zach have traded their way into good teams. Like, I am not looking forward to the matchups, how things are going to go. Not definitely worried, hoping for the best, but it's going to be most likely a very competitive playoff run this year, and it's going to be exciting to see who makes it. If, depending on, assuming that Disco takes the 5 seed, I should mention this before we go here, that would mean, and depending on who gets in, all the possible teams who would make the 6th seed, doesn't matter. So possibly, we will definitely have 4 out of the 6 playoff teams will be teams who have never won the Tonto Bowl. Possum Magic, Balls Deep, Ed Lager, and Disco. 4 teams, all trying to get their first Tonto Bowl, while myself and whoever makes it in at that number 6 seed will have been a previous champion. But yeah, we'll have 4 contenders this year for their first Tonto Bowl. Should be an exciting and fun and super competitive playoff run this year. Again, like I said, strong teams rising to the top here in the stretch run. So yeah, anything can happen, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. I'm glad that I can kind of take a breather here for these next 2 weeks. Pray that nobody gets injured, and basically right now I'm just getting ready for week 15. Excuse me, week 16, right? Because that's first week of playoffs is 15. I'm still having a hard time adjusting to that. the playoffs being a week later than they used to be. So yeah, it's week 14, but I'm just kind of sitting around waiting for week 16. Not a good position to be in, but we'll see what happens. I might not even bother playing a kicker this week, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Bill, Zach has a lot of guys. He's heavily invested in the Packers-Lions matchup. Fortunately for me, that's on a Thursday night, so hopefully it's sort of a defensive struggle for those guys. He's got Love, he's got Monty, he's got Jacobs. So yeah, we'll see what happens based on what happens Thursday night. If I actually end up even bothering to pick up and play a kicker this week, so it doesn't matter to me what happens in this matchup, but it does matter to some other people. So we'll see what happens. All right, guys, I think that's pretty much it for week 13 as we head this roller coaster season finally coming to an end here. It's been a great season, a fun season, all over the place, just week to week, all sorts of things. Again, just it has been quite the roller coaster of events. Another great year coming to a conclusion. Went by seemingly so fast, as it always tends to do. Guys, thanks for listening, watching, or whatever it is you do. Hopefully all our players meet or exceed expectations this week. Nobody gets hurt. Kevin, your dog took a shit on Antonio Brown, duck, right over there. If you could please clean that up, have somebody take care of that. And is that pretty much it, I think, for week 13? So hopefully we get a podcast this week and you guys come back over Thanksgiving. Your families should know that Tonto's demise is more important than them. I don't understand how after all these years, Brian, you've been in the league for all 22 years. Crystal should know that she is secondary to Tonto's demise. Obviously, Matt doesn't care. His dedication, just completely, he's not the person. He is not the man that we fell in love with 22 years ago. I don't even know if he exists anymore. But yeah, that's my perspective on it, at least. No one needs to learn the hard way that Daddy has higher priorities than her. That's just saying. And Big or whatever, I don't know, whatever your kids' names are, I don't even know what your situation is. But anyway, I think that's it. I look forward. I hope that we have an exciting week 14 and a lot of these matchups fall into place. That that last number 6 seed is up for grabs all the way up until the very end. What's the Monday night game this week? I think it's that. Is it the Cow? Oh yeah, I got my Bengals going against the Cowboy at the Cowboys, so the weather will be good on Monday night. That could be a That could be a shootout. I look forward to watching that game and seeing getting to see what happens here. But yeah. So most things should be decided by Sunday night because really, who has? I mean, other than CD Lamb, I have a Chase. Well, Chase Brown doesn't matter. All the main Bengals are on my team, obviously. And any Cowboys you would be starting on. Tree has Dowdle now. Dowdle and Lamb are probably the only Cowboys in anybody's lineups right now. So yeah, Tree will come down to Monday night possibly, and Justin there. But for the most part, things should be decided. It'll be decided how. It will be decided how things shake out by Sunday night. What is the Sunday night game? It's not listed here. Sunday night game. Chargers at Chiefs. Okay, that should be a good one. With lots of implications there too. So yeah, it's gonna be a fun Sunday. Unfortunately, I'll be spending most of it at work and enjoying the Monday night game. So yeah, enough. I said goodbye like 2 minutes ago. I get shit on it all the time. I know. Can never seem to do it. All right, guys. Thanks for listening, watching, whatever it is you do. And look forward to an exciting Week 14 and the final conclusion to the regular season of Tonto's Demise Season 22 as we head into the playoffs. Good luck to all you guys trying to fight your way in there. Only one of you, I think, is going to make it, but it should be fun to see who it is. All right, and we'll come back here next week, and we'll talk about it all and preview the first round of the playoffs. All right, guys, thanks again. Bye-bye.